Joining us now, General Paul Vallely, the chairman of Stand Up America. General, we thank you for again appearing here today on America's Forum.
Thank you, JD. Happy to be back with you, and we've got some good updates for you.
Well, we want to get to those updates. First, Paul, just since you have been in command of troops, have worked with a lot of people in your days in the United States Army, what do you believe our commander-in-chief should be doing to combat the spread of ISIS?
Well, there's several things he can do right now. We've got to work through what we call proxy forces over there. That's the Peshmerga, even elements of the PKK and the Free Syrian Army. They will make it happen on the ground if we give them the right support, and that support is giving them some liaison with our special operations groups that's being done now, of course, with Kurdistan, but we have to extend it over to the Free Syrian Army now, who works out of that northern part of Syria. That's got to be immediately done, and we've got to extend and really increase the frequency on the convoys and the elements of the ISIS forces that we can identify through our drones, through satellites, and through eyes and ears on the ground.
Paul, our Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel yesterday in that press conference at the Pentagon said, quoting now, "ISIS is unlike anything we've seen before." Is that true, and does it exceed the threat of Al-Qaeda pre-9/11?
Well, it sure does, and he was right. It is now extended and morphed into an army that is occupying and expanding the Levant or the Caliphate region over there now. So at this point in time, the borders are irrelevant. The Syrian-Iraqi border is irrelevant. That's why we must continue to extend our operations, support the FSA, and to knock out any targets that are transiting between Syria and Iraq and Syria.
Paul, some talk, or at least in my mind too, I've focused on this, the notion of our initial involvement in Afghanistan post 9/11, small, agile, mobile forces calling in air support at key times. Is that kind of back to the future response something that could work against ISIS in Iraq, Syria, and other places?
Absolutely, and I've advocated that for over 8 years now, that this is an unconventional war, and just like we did in the beginning of Afghanistan in the fall of 2001, with slightly over 100 paramilitary and special operation, we were able to light up the Taliban on the ground, bring in the B-52s, bring in air power, and the same thing is even more valid today. Eyes and ears on the ground with our special ops, good intel, and then we target it and take them out. We can take one of our laser-guided bombs and put it down a smokestack. So we can take out these convoys and elements based on good intelligence.
Well, you know, we've had a situation where yesterday and the day before, the news was released about a failed Special Forces mission. General Martin Dempsey yesterday in that press conference went into some detail as to what we were doing in terms of Special Forces trying to go in and find our hostages there in Iraq and Syria. Was that wise to do? What was the rationale behind that?
Well, I would not have done it that way. Again, I'm the one that vetted out the FSA. I know where they're located. We should have worked through the FSA to do a rescue operation. We know back around July 4th, it was a $1 million bounty that they were looking for over there, and the FSA was prepared to do it if we had worked through them. And then have that adjunct to a special operations element working with them over there. But July 4th, evidently through our sources, there was a mission that attempted to rescue 2 Ukrainians, 1 Iranian, and Foley. But it did not take place, and it may have been launched out of a nearby country that I know about that I don't want to divulge, along with some other forces over there.
Well, we appreciate the fact you don't want to divulge things because there's still the whole notion of operational security and what may happen in the future. Just want to make sure I have this right. FSA, the acronym for Free Syrian Army, that correct,
Correct.
General? Okay,
Correct.
Good. I have that right. We see a differing acronym for ISIS or ISIL. There are a variety of descriptions for that, but setting that aside for a second, I mentioned General Martin Dempsey in the press conference yesterday. Let's listen to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs addressing the threat of ISIS.
This is an organization that has an apocalyptic end of days strategic vision, and which will eventually have to be defeated. To your question, can they be defeated without addressing that part of their organization which resides? No.
All right, so General Dempsey's talking about Syria. Paul, you've had interaction with the Free Syrian Army. Do you foresee American Special Forces, some presence eventually from the United States in Syria?
If they work with the Free Syrian Army on the ground, they'll get them in. They'll be the eyes and ears over there to bring in airstrikes against ISIS forces. Now, Baghdadi, the head of ISIS in Iraq, left his headquarters in Mosul on August 10th, transited with a convoy of Humvees back into Syria again. So they're working out of that eastern and northern Syria area where we have FSA elements on the ground that can work. But this is the strategy you have to take. And it's not American boots on the ground other than intel and special operations guys. And we can take ISIS down very, very quickly. It does very, very quickly. It does not have to be a long-term situation if we do it the right way.
Paul, not only about ISIS in Iraq and Syria, but the possibility of ISIS being here. We have failed to secure our borders. Do you believe there are operational units, whether it's ISIS or other Islamic, here today in the United States?
Well, I'll impart to you what I found out yesterday from our intel team down on the border. And I'll just say Chip, as one of our intel team members, he reported that some documents were found on the Texas border this week in Arabic. And so from that, we're going to try to validate more that, in fact, maybe an ISIS al-Qaeda team that's been working through our borders for a number of years now, in fact, are infiltrating across those borders, particularly across the Texas border right now. And they are creating situations and these cells in the United States around our big cities to attack shopping malls, our transportation, and our grid system.
Well, that portends real concern for the future. Next door to Texas, the state of Oklahoma, Senator Jim Inhofe, the second-ranking Minority Services Committee, and Jim Inhofe had this to say about the threat of ISIS and what he believes President Obama must do. Let's take a listen.
They're crazy out there. Really developing a method of blowing up a major U.S. city, and people just can't believe that's happening. He's going to have to come up with something that we're going to do because they're holding another hostage in place. And the problem is the president, quite frankly, he says all these things and he never does them.
Well, Paul, do you agree with Senator Inhofe's assessment about the president offering lip service but failing to follow through?
Well, he's a weak leader when it comes to national security, and that's been the case since his inception, as well as his national security team in the White House. They're absolutely clueless. I think Obama's timid, maybe a coward, but he certainly is not the type of leadership we need in this country. I have one other report to give you if we have enough time.
We got about a minute and a half. Go ahead, Paul.
Yesterday we got a report in that ISIS in Syria, outside of a town called Takba, Takba, which was a Syrian airfield with MiG-21s, was captured by ISIS. 1,200 of Assad's men also were captured at that time and are being retained by the ISIS forces. So here you have an airport now that's been taken down by ISIS in Syria. And this is a critical matter.
They have the airport now. Here's my question with a minute 10 remaining, Paul. Will we see, or is there already in place, an ISIS Air Force?
Oh, not yet, but certainly they can recruit them or find them over there. Even some of the people that have defected from the Assad armed forces could be brought in and paid to fly those aircraft. So we're going to have further validation on this, but this just came in overnight.
As always, Paul Vallely, you've been a good friend of this program and your organization, Stand Up America, the other organizations with which you are affiliated, offering information that we all need to know. We really appreciate your time today, Paul, as you Skype in from Montana.
Thank you, Stady. Thank you.
Major General Paul Vallely, U.S. Army retired, but still very active. You heard what the general had to say. What's your take on that? We'd love to hear from you. Why don't you tweet me your comments at NewsmaxTV, hashtag America's Forum. There's also newsmaxtv.com/comment. And don't forget Facebook. Our faces are coming right back.